The story begins by showing a woman named Case Harden, whose body is covered with tattoos. She is a drug addict and former cult member who is trying to get back on the right path. However, it is not easy, as she always remembers her childhood trauma when she was kidnapped by cult members. On the other hand, introduced to an honest policeman who certainly never commits extortion when ticketing people. In his office, he is often called Bob Hightower. He is also a good father to Gabby, his only daughter, who now lives with his ex-wife. So, as it turns out, he got divorced about 5 years ago, and his ex has remarried someone else. But unfortunately, the marriage is even more toxic, where they often fight at home and make Gabby frustration. Fortunately, Bob is always present when the daughter needs him. Long story short, Bob stopped by his ex-wife's house. Then he called Gabby to wish her a Merry Christmas. However, not long after hanging up the phone from her father, Gabby felt an oddity, because her house was suddenly quiet, even though her biological mother and stepfather had an argument. Then, when he was about to check another room, suddenly an unknown intruder entered and held Gabby captive. Not only that, they also raped her mother and tortured her stepfather. And when they were satisfied, these cult members immediately finished them both very cruelly. The next day, Bob looked upset because his daughter didn't come to church to worship before Christmas. Feeling worried, he finally went to Gabby's house with Arthur Nassi, who was none other than his former father-in-law. Arriving there, they were both very surprised to see the corpse of Gabby's stepfather hanging in terrible conditions. They also found the body of Gabby's mother floating in the swimming pool. Suddenly, Arthur was immediately hysterical because the woman was his only daughter. Long story short, the two bodies were finally buried. And here Bob feels very sad because he is not beside of his ex-wife when she needs his help. Moreover, Bob hasn't found Gabby's whereabouts. Until now, 6 weeks later, Case was crying in a drug rehab center after seeing the news about Gabby's kidnapping in the newspaper. She recalled her dark days when she was kidnapped by a cult group. Therefore, she intends to contact Bob and help him investigate the case. At the same time, Bob seemed desperate because he couldn't find his only daughter. However, he still has one way, that is by asking for clues from Case, who was a victim of kidnapping as a child. Unfortunately, Bob's boss named John Lee forbade him to deal with the woman. Moreover, he is a drug addict. Even so, Bob still met Case at his rehab center. Bob then showed a photo of the corpse of Gabby's stepfather, who had a tarot card on his body. And according to Case, the card symbolizes judgment, which means that Gabby's stepfather once did something wrong to the cult. However, in the middle of the conversation, Case's trauma returned, and she immediately left the room in fear. While calming down, Case was reminded of her past when she decided to leave the sect. At that time, she was severely tortured by the sect leader named Cyrus. Luckily, the torture was stopped by the ferryman, a striped-faced, left-handed sect member. Here Cyrus did not dare to fight him, even though he was the sect leader, until finally he let Case out of his sect. After her condition improved, Case came to see Bob to tell him that the kidnapper of Gabby was a member of a cult known as the Left-Handed Path. This sect is a satanic cult that often kidnaps young girls to become members or even be sacrificed to their god. And strangely, this sect has never been investigated by the FBI or the police. In essence, Case is willing to help Bob, especially since she still has a grudge against Cyrus and the others. But before continuing the investigation, she suggested that Bob disguise himself as one of the sect members. Not long after that, Bob said goodbye to Arthur and said that he would save his daughter. However, as a former father-in-law, Arthur was worried about his safety. Bob didn't respond to his words and was determined to investigate this case to the end. On the way, Case was reminded of his past when Cyrus and the others made her a prostitute who had to serve masculine men. And of course, it became one of the biggest traumas in her life. Long story short, the two of them finally arrived at Ferryman's residence. Although still a member of the sect, this man was always kind to Case. In this place, Case asked for an army of weapons to brutalize. Meanwhile, Ferryman tattooed Bob's body as a condition for joining the Cyrus sect. After being tattooed, Bob and Case asked ferryman about Cyrus' whereabouts. And without thinking, this man immediately told his location, which was outside the city. And based on this info, the two of them continued their journey. On the other hand, John was drunk with his wife named Maureen. At first, they discussed Bob's determination to find his daughter without the help of other police. However, when it was late at night, John suddenly brought up Maureen's affair with Gaby's stepfather. And because he was already angry, he was out of control. Until John also committed domestic violence to his wife. At the same time, Bob asked the Case about Cyrus' background. The woman then told him that Cyrus had been a gangster and drug addict since he was a boy. He even committed other crimes, such as violence and human trafficking. But one day, Cyrus killed someone he really cared about, which made him stressed, and then he founded a cult. As a pious person, Bob couldn't understand why anyone would found a cult when there are many religions in this world. After a long journey, they both decided to stop at a stall filled with lost youth. There, Bob again asked Case about her reasons for leaving the sect. The point is, this woman always remembers her mother, whom she hasn't seen in years. She even went so far as to call her mother to a random woman who didn't similar her at all. From that moment on, she had the urge to leave the sect and search for her mother's address. Later that night, they came to a satanic bar, a place where lost youths were partying. Here, Case met one of the Cyrus members named Errol. He was the owner of the bar, and Case showed him the injection marks on her arm as a sign that she was still a cult member. Seeing that, Bob looked very disappointed. He thought that the woman had really left the sect. Then Case explained that it was just mangosteen skin extract injected into her body, and he did it in order to trick sect members. Case then told the news she received from Errol that Cyrus would be coming to the place. Maureen, on the other hand, came to Arthur's bar battered. Then she told him about John, who almost killed her because of an affair. In addition, she also suspected that John was still vengeful and would not look for the person who had killed Arthur's son and child-in-law. At the same time, Bob left his inn to find peace at the bar. There, he actually met Cyrus' men, and without wasting time, he invited Case to follow them from behind. Not long after, Bob saw Errol, who was with 3 of Cyrus' men. Errol then told them that Case had come back. Hearing that, one of Cyrus' men named Gutter looked very surprised, and afterward, he immediately informed Cyrus over the phone. Then when the Cyrus men began to move, Case decided to follow them alone, but instead she was forced to meet Cyrus. Meanwhile, Bob, who lost track of Case, finally went after the woman. But unfortunately, he was attacked by a cult member. Because he was already seriously injured, he also bought medical supplies to treat his stomach, which was torn due to the attack of Cyrus' men. On the other hand, Case was brought to Cyrus' room, and without mercy, the sect leader immediately beat her up. Case was unable to fight back, because she was alone and helpless. Moreover, Cyrus seemed to be still angry with her, since she left the sect. In addition, Cyrus also suspected that Errol deliberately brought Case into his sect in order to coup his position. And to prove the truth of that, Cyrus also told Case to finish off Errol. But this woman instead threatened and challenged Cyrus to shoot each other themselves. At the same time, Bob was looking for Case's whereabouts, and after looking for it for hours, he saw an old man wearing Case's jacket. As a result, he forced the old man to tell him where he found the jacket. In short, he was escorted to a nightclub, and in that place, he saw the Case being raped by the gangsters. Not staying silent, Bob immediately finished them off with a shotgun. Arriving at the inn, Bob and Case rest in the same bed. Here, they strengthen each other because they both suffer from the Cyrus Curse sect. The next day, they continued their journey to pursue Cyrus, who went elsewhere and wanted nothing to do with Case. On this trip, the relationship between the two of them became closer, seen in Bob's attitude, who was more attentive to Case compared to when he first met her. After driving for days, they finally met Errol, the bar owner, again. They both asked about Cyrus' whereabouts, but the man didn't want to open his mouth, so Case went berserk and immediately beat Errol. Luckily, Bob was able to withstand the woman's anger. Because if Errol dies, they have no other clues. Unfortunately, Errol even could escape from there. The next day, Case took Bob to visit a building, which was none other than a ritual site belonging to the Cyrus sect. Seeing the place, Case was reminded of her past when she was tortured and almost made a sacrifice by Cyrus and the others. And when she was walking through a room, suddenly there was a bald man, a member of the sect, who lunged at Case and tried to kill her. Fortunately, Case was still strong enough to finish off the cult member. Case then told Bob that all the girls kidnapped by Cyrus would be taken to the cult, then forced to smoke drugs, raped, then killed. But not all girls will be finished off. Like the Case, Gabby might still be alive and used as a woman of lust to serve corrupt officials. At once, Bob became very angry and immediately burned down the shrine. And at night, Cyrus saw the fire with his own eyes. Not long after, Errol told him that the fire was the work of the Case, who wanted to see him again. However, Cyrus suspected that Errol was deliberately telling this place. Moreover, inside there are many hidden drugs that can be sold at a high price. Without wasting time, Cyrus ordered his men to inject drugs into a snake to make it more aggressive and deadly. He intends to finish off Bob and Case with the animal. But before the action, Cyrus did a snake dance to hardcore music. Then after that, he assigned his men to put the snake in Bob's car. At that time, Bob and Case were having dinner at a restaurant. While eating food, Case showed Bob a bullet. Then she said that bullets are God. The point is, bullets can always determine human fate between life or death. So, as long as they still have bullets, then they still have a chance for revenge. After dinner, Bob got back into his car. But when he wanted to light a cigarette, suddenly Cyrus' snake bit his hand and neck. Fortunately, he was able to kill the snake. And at the same time, one of Cyrus' men was watching him. As a result, Bob immediately chased him at that time. Even though he could stab the man, the snake venom in his body had reacted, making him scream. Before treating Bob, Case decided to finish off Cyrus' men, so that their trail is not tracked. Not long after, she took Bob to Ferryman's place. That's because only he can treat him. Without lingering, Ferryman injected the antidote into Bob's body and told Case to take care of him until he woke up. In the morning, Case woke up next to Bob. Unfortunately, the man had regained consciousness and was no longer in pain. Apparently, the drug injected by Ferryman was very useful. Case was very grateful to see him survive, even though his life was on the edge. When his condition getting better, the two of them continued their journey. This time, they met one of the sect members named Lena, who had also been Case's best friend. Here, they intend to bait Cyrus out of his place. On the other hand, Arthur came to John's house and immediately beat him up. He then said that Cyrus had just told him that John was the mastermind of the death of his child and child-in-law, as well as the kidnapper of the young Gabby. John, however, denied the allegations and said that Cyrus was trying to pit Arthur against him. Meanwhile, Maureen looks confused because she doesn't know who Cyrus was. Finally, Arthur told his past relationship with John and Cyrus. Essentially, the sect leader had made a deal to sell his mother's land to Arthur and John. And the plan is that the two of them will use the land to build a place of immorality sins. However, his mother didn't want to sign the proof of sale. Feeling upset, Cyrus shot his own mother. Then Cyrus used his mother's hand to sign the land sale. And since then, he has become increasingly crazy, to the point of creating a heretical sect that doubles as a criminal gang. On the other hand, John and Arthur couldn't move because Cyrus would definitely accuse them of being involved in the murder. After hearing his explanation, Maureen was very upset. And so that John wouldn't be a burden on life, she decided to kill him without further ado. At the same time, Bob and Case contacted Cyrus using Lena's phone. Here, Cyrus makes an offer, which basically means if he wants to save Gabby, then they both have to seize the money stolen by Errol. Hearing that, Lena was mad like a drug addict in general. As a result, Bob kicked her out of the inn. That night, Case met with one of Cyrus' men who was in charge of guarding the girls. Then she made a deal. Without Bob's knowledge, Case promised to surrender herself to Cyrus as long as Gabby was released and returned to her father. Without thinking, Cyrus's men agreed to her offer. Not thinking for long, Case and Bob went to Errol's place. They were then confronted by the guards who were assigned to ensure that the two of them didn't carry any weapons. But Bob had hidden the gun in a safe bag, and when Errol appeared, he immediately finished off all the guards very brutally. Seeing that, Errol was terrified and couldn't move at all. Bob then pushed him into the pool, then shot him to death. The next day, they went to a place to hand over the money they took from Errol. And according to the agreement, then Cyrus has the right to take Case as his servant again. However, Bob refused on the spot because he didn't know what agreement Cyrus meant. Then, when he wanted to help Case, Cyrus suddenly shot Lena. Cyrus doing that because wanted to show his cruelty in front of Bob. Then he canceled his agreement with Case and made a new deal. In essence, Bob will give half the money he took from Errol's house, and if he had met Gabby, then he would give the other half. Cyrus agreed to the offer and immediately told the location. But before Bob left, he said that his sect had a relationship with Arthur and John. In addition, the two of them were also involved in Gabby's kidnapping. And here, Bob can only hold back his anger, so as not to get out of control before saving his daughter. Not long after, Bob and Case finally arrived at the meeting location. And without further ado, they handed over the rest of the money to Cyrus' men, then approached Gabby, who had just been released. But unfortunately, Cyrus broke the deal and shot off fireworks as a sign of attack. He sent Gutter and some minions to brutalize there. Bob immediately hid his daughter in a culvert. There, Gabby spoke in a low voice that she wanted her father to brutalize and finish them all. Of course, as a good father, Bob will do anything for his daughter, and without waiting any longer, the battle ensued. Unfortunately, Gutter could wrap Case's head in plastic, which made it difficult for her to breathe. Meanwhile, Bob was also badly beaten by his enemy. On the other hand, one of Cyrus' men tried to approach Gabby, but the girl was able to shoot him with her father's gun. Gutter, who heard the gunshot, immediately looked for the source of the sound. And Gabby didn't just silent. Even though her condition was very weak, she was still able to fight back. Long story short, Bob was able to finish off all of Cyrus' men. But because the wound was quite severe, he finally fell and was unconscious. The next morning, Gabby asked for help from a passing helicopter to take Case and also his father to the hospital. A few days later, Bob's condition had improved, and he decided to go to the FBI hearing. There he saw Maureen and Arthur, who were being interrogated regarding John's death. Apart from the two of them, Case also came to give a confession to the police regarding the crimes committed by Cyrus and others. After the trial was over, Bob asked Maureen what happened to John, but the woman lied and claimed not to know anything. Likewise with Arthur, he claimed not to have any connection with Cyrus or his sect. And that made Bob very disappointed. He could have finished them both at once, but he chose to punish them according to the rules and applicable law. After returning from there, Bob met with Case. The woman wants to go somewhere. Before she left, Bob gave an address where her mother lived, and Case thanked him for all his help. Later that night, Case was in a place that turned out to be Cyrus' hideout. She then waited for Cyrus in an old attic that was dirty and dusty, but for some reason, Cyrus had not yet appeared. After waiting for a week, Cyrus finally came to the place. Case immediately entered and pointed her gun while Cyrus was peeing. Case then told Cyrus to sit in a chair. Here Case vented all the anger that was inside her, then finished off Cyrus with vengeance. It didn't take long for the news of Cyrus' death to spread, and the FBI asked Bob to check the scene of the crime, because only he knew who the murderer was. Arriving there, he saw a tarot card that indicated that she had succeeded in avenging him. On the other hand, the woman went to her mother's address. However, the mother already has a new family. Seeing her mother living happily, Case felt that her presence was no longer needed. Finally, she chose to leave without saying a word to her mother. At the end of the movie, Bob met Case again and decided to live together. Along with the relationship between Bob and Case, the movie ended.